Hello, Utkarsh. Thank you for joining us. Hello, everybody who's watching this video. Welcome to Writersmelon. Today, I have Utkarsh Patel. He's an author of this new book called Indra, The Rise and Fall of a Hero, right? And we all have probably seen a character called Indra in a lot of mythological serials or movies or have read in books. But let's hear it from Utkarsh. What can he tell us about this mythological character called Indra? Yes, over to you.
Yeah, hi everybody, and hi Priyanka. Thanks for inviting me to your sessions here. It's interesting. The character Indra, we must understand, and there are two things that you have to understand in mythology, especially Indian mythology, that we divide these in two parts. One is the Vedic mythology, okay, and then comes your post-Vedic mythology. During the Vedic mythology, we people in those days, and a lot of it we derived from the Rig Veda. People used to worship gods which were elemental. So you had your
Fire.
sky god,
Okay,
you had Varun, which is then
wind.
you have Vayu, then you have Agni. These are the kind of elemental gods. Post Vedic, we had different set of gods with very different personalities also. So then you had Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, etc.
Hmm.
Let's go to the Vedic time. During the Vedic time, Indra was one of the most important gods. There are more than 220 hymns completely dedicated to Indra, and around 300 hymns where he's mentioned. So you can imagine the significance of a god called Indra, who was a warrior god, who was a thunder god, rain god. So that makes him also a fertility god in mythology, as we study mythology. And thereafter, he is known for some of his brilliant, well fought strategic battles with demons, be it Vala, be it Namuchi, or be it Vritra. Now, his battle with Vritra is kind of an epic battle, which is mentioned more than 100 times in the Rig Veda. So you can imagine the significance of the Indra Vritra conflict. It was so important that Rig Veda has close to 100 mentions just about the conflict.
Okay.
Here is a god who's a hero, absolute hymns being spoken about, and there are many other things about him. But by the time we come to post-Vedic period, with the rise of Vishnu, with the rise of Brahma and Shiva, we suddenly see a kind of a very derogatory references of Indra. He's
Yes.
insecure. He is scared at the drop of a hat. He's reduced to just sending apsaras,
Yes.
on
Full of
earth,
luxury in
full of
Devlok.
luxury, given to wine and women.
Yes.
That's the kind of image that was
Very
created.
true.
And insecure god, and every other god could take pot shots at him.
Yes.
There were sages who could get away by just cursing him. Not only that, in
And not
Ramayan,
really a god you would worship, I mean, or
not
look up to.
exactly, not a god, absolutely. And in Ramayan, we even have Ravan's son getting the better of him and earning the epithet of Indrajit. Meghnad
Yes.
is called Indrajit. So you can imagine that, forget about gods defeating him. There were even Danavs and the Rakshasas who were defeating him. What happened to a person like that? And why was such a great hero, was a warrior hero with so many references in Rigved? Why was he reduced to such a sorry figure, with the rise of other gods? And the book is basically bringing that element out to explain why was there a rise, which we understand up to a point, and why the fall?
Fall.
This fall, and it's so, while there is a, we have a theory in mythology, when we say that there are always a rise and fall of a hero, as the new, Tennyson has very nicely said, the old order changeth, maketh way for new. And
Yes.
that's exactly happened in the case of Indra, wherein when the new gods came up, the likes of Vishnu, especially Vishnu, who's very important there. And often we find that Indra running to Vishnu, saying, "Bail me out of this, or save me, or help me." And there are so many episodes in the post-Vedic stories, in the Puranic stories, as we call them, where we see, a child Krishna either ridiculing Indra or helping Indra, or coming to rescue of Indra. a child Krishna, not even a grown-up Krishna we are talking about here. So the whole idea of this book was to trace the journey of a hero to the rise and the subsequent fall. And
Mm.
that's what the book is about. And I just felt that, like you mentioned, TV serials and films, everywhere, Indra is a very, very sorry figure.
Yes.
Absolutely, somebody who can't help himself, somebody who's insecure. Sages can curse him. That's another one. Sages can curse him. We don't have any other sage cursing any other
Oh
gods
God. Yeah.
in mythology, but sages cursing Indra is a very, very common phenomena. What happened? How is it that sages are cursing gods? So all that kind of is put together to sort of bring out the idea of the rise and
And
fall
the fall.
of a hero, and that's what the book is all about.
And this rise and fall is, I guess, a story of every civilization, right? I mean, be it and it is the civilization and the stories which are told and become famous at one point, and then somewhere they are lost until they are like retold in a modern with a modern cover, with a modern voice, or a modern in the modern context. I was reading your bio and I saw that you are a professor of comparative mythology, which also kind of intrigued me about what is a comparative mythology. So please tell us more about it, what exactly it entails, and um, how do we compare ourselves with other civilizations and culture?
The idea of comparative mythology is something that Joseph Campbell introduced, where he explains to us that and the study of comparative mythology, what we do is we try and study myths from across the world, not just Indian mythology or not just Greek mythology. Everybody is familiar with Greek mythology. Everybody's familiar with Egyptian mythology.
Yeah.
But when we do the study of comparative mythology, we kind of study them across in a horizontal manner, and we try and bring out the comparative aspects between all the cultures. You see, if India, or if, let's say, Vyas or Valmiki found the need to write an epic where we are talking about a character and his journey, be it Ram, be it Arjun, be it Krishna, is it unique to us? Did nobody else think about it? And when you realize that the journey of a hero is also an interesting subject, we find that Greeks have done it before us.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Mesopotamians have done it before us. There was a wonderful epic by the name of Gilgamesh. Again, it's the journey of a hero called Gilgamesh. Then we have Iliad. Then we have Odyssey. What is it that kind of talks of similarities? You know, man has been preoccupied with where did I come from,
Yeah.
right? Today, when you ask that question, where did I come from, I would say, okay, that's it's a very philosophical question that you have in mind. Where did I come from? What am I doing on earth? What is this earth? Let me ask very basic questions, but today you see it as philosophical questions. When early man, the primeval man, the early man, when he asked this question, who am I, where have I come from, it was a question of identity for him. He was trying to
Yes.
understand who is he in relation to his surroundings. And that's where everybody created what we call in mythology the creation myths. Where did the earth come from? See,
Mm-hmm.
the idea of science taking shape and telling you the Big Bang theory and the theory of evolution, all that
Evolution.
is much later. What did the early man do? So he created a story whereby he gives this entire creative power to some higher authority, who we later on started calling God.
Yeah.
So God created. So be it biblical myth, be it Indian myths, be it Mesopotamian, Chinese, Egyptian, the North American, all of them have a creation myth. Because
Okay.
everybody, and that shows that it's not just one geographical set of people thinking about where did I come from. It's not that we are the only evolved souls on earth. There were others also, because everybody had the similar quest about me, my surroundings, about the weather, about the sun, the moon, the earth, so on and so forth. So when we study comparative mythology, we realize that cultures across the world, be it evolved, be it lesser known, be it unknown, everybody has thought through this, or everybody has had these kind of quests, these kind of
Right.
questions in the mind, and they've given an answer. And that is what forms the crux of mythology. And when you study across the cultures, you realize that is what we call the study of comparative mythology.
Excellent. I'm just wondering, maybe we can just go on and on hearing this almost like a
Yeah,
comparative mythology lecture, because these topics really interest me a lot. Let's talk about your research process then, because you're a professor, you must have like libraries full of books around you. How do you go about the research, and how difficult it is to find find these literature, because these must be like, I don't know how many years old. You're talking of a time when hardly paper and printing press was there, right? So
right.
how hard it is to do these research?
It is. I think I kind of make it more difficult than what others might do. And let me add that, and let me tell you why I do that. When I write something, I have a whole host of my students reading it,
Okay.
right? The audience is not just a layman. The audience is, by now about 10 or maybe 12 years of ex-students who are all reading it.
Mm,
So I am doubly conscious of the fact that I just can't put a fantastical element in my story. Also, the effort that I also take is to kind of demythologize the whole idea. See, writing that there was a miracle and something happened is fine. That's very
mm,
easy to write.
mm,
But if the miracle is very important in the story,
mm.
then what exactly could have happened? It's still going to be,
A could
at a level
have.
of
Yeah.
conjecture. But the idea is that if I can make the story more believable, because you see, a lot of people believe that some amount of it, some element of the myth might have taken place. I'm not
Mm,
going there as to did it or did it not. But how can you make your story more believable? And that makes my job tougher, because then I have to read much more. So I read the original, I read interpretations by the scholars, and then try to make, like, for example, there is an episode in my book, this one, which talks of Apala, Indra and Apala. Now, Indra and Apala, if you read the Rig Vedic hymn, is what we call, very in mythological terms, we call it etiological myth. What is etiological myth? Etiological myth talks about how something came into existence. Simple. Why does the river flow from the top of the mountain to the sea? There's
mm,
a story. And then, we go ahead and explain, and that's your etiological myth. In the story of Apala, it took me quite a long time to explain, because the Rigvedic myth is very vague. And remember, the Rigvedic myths are cryptic. They
mm.
don't get into detailed analysis or explanation. They just tell
Right.
you something. And if you read at the surface of the Apala myth, it's kind of very odd. I mean, if I
Mm,
tell you the story, or if a kid reads it, or if a young man reads it, they would be put off by it and by saying it just doesn't make sense. But
mm,
Apala myth is such an important myth in the story of Indra that it needed an interpretation. How do I interpret it? Of course, I've interpreted it in a manner to say that if this is what the Rigvedic hymn talks about, this could be something. Now, for that, you need to understand Indra's personality. For that, you need to understand Indra's role in those times, as envisaged by the Rigvedic hymns and by the scholars who've gone and kind of given the various opinion about Indra. Based on that, now Indra is a fertility god, also being a rain god. And often this has been kind of misinterpreted that, oh, he's got numerous liaisons. He's somebody with a very questionable morals and etc. But remember, all fertility gods across the cultures would have numerous relationships. That
yeah.
is how the early man expressed the basic instinct in and connected it with fertility. So to for a moralistic society later on, we'll start finding faults with
Questioning.
that. But
Yeah.
the early man, where the morality was probably very different at that time, this was a given. This wasn't very questionable in those days. See,
Mm,
today many of us are questioning many of those things that we read in myths. But please remember, and all of us must remember, the myths, the epics were not written for you and me
mm.
to sit here in the 21st century and debate about it. They were written for a very different milieu.
Correct.
We might dissect it, we might hair split it, but it was not written for you and me. Mr. Valmiki had no clue that after so many thousands of years, his book is going to have such an impact. He wrote it for a purpose. He wrote it for a milieu. That's it. But
True.
see where the epic has where the epic is today, at what
Yes.
level the epic is today. So myths have to be taken in their milieu, in the surrounding, and to be seen in that context. And in that context, when we see Indra's numerous liaisons as nothing but his role as a fertility deity, and not somebody with a questionable model, which of course in due course of time we have done. So yes, the whole process takes a lot of time to sort of put together. And another thing, when it comes to Indra, characters like Indra, Rigved doesn't talk of a chronology. It doesn't
Mm,
talk order. It doesn't, like, for example, if you have to write on Ram, if you have to write on Krishna, we have details from his birth to the end. In
mm,
Indra, we don't have that. So creating a novel where you have to trace Indra's birth up to a point needed a lot of reading to bring it into, weave it into a
yeah,
narrative, because now
I'm
I'm writing
sure.
a novel here. I just can't spring hymns the way Rigved has done.
Yes.
So that kind of takes time. And yeah, that needs a little bit of an understanding. So yes, a lot of research goes in terms of reading the original, reading the interpretations of some well-known scholars that kind of we refer and we use for our understanding.
Right.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time.
Up, I'm sure. And like you mentioned, like for Indra, there is probably very little interpretation also available in
Hmm.
the book space. I mean, you could have like so many different versions of, let's say, a Ramayana or a Mahabharata, but when you want to research about a character like Indra, you'll have to rely on very little that is available. Who are the other characters that really intrigue you and you think you would love to explore them or write about them or are already writing?
Well, till before I wrote Indra, my focus had been mainly on female characters.
Mm-hmm.
All my earlier books are female characters, and that comes from a very different space. As a teacher, somebody who teaches comparative mythology, I often come across a question saying, are there no heroes, female heroes in mythology? How come we are only talking about male heroes across the world? And that's
True.
what sets me think. That's what initially set me thinking. And I wrote about women heroes earlier. So there are heroes. This is not to say there are no women heroes. It's just that myths have always focused on male heroes because they are adventurous. They go kill the demons. They go kill the
Mm,
rakshasas. They fight battles.
mm.
Women don't do that.
Yeah.
And so heroism of men have always been compared with women. Now, the
Correct.
heroism of men and heroism of women don't have to be the same. A
Mm,
woman doesn't have to always win a battle to show that she's a hero. She
mm,
could do something else and still be a hero. For example, the famous character called Kannagi from Silabadikaram, there's a unique epic we have in Tamil,
mm.
which has no battles, no male hero. All through the epic, it's a woman who carries the entire epic on her shoulder.
Right.
It has no divine intervention except towards the end. There is no battle, there are no palace intrigues. It's about a common person, but it's still an epic, which I think has not got its due. One, because it's not written in Sanskrit, and maybe second, because there's no male hero there and there are no battles. There's no masculinity, stamps of masculinity in that epic as we see in the other epics. But it's still an epic. So I have always tried to tell that kind of stories. However, other characters who really kind of intrigue me and are certain characters like Shakuni in
I'm sure.
Mahabharata. Like we nicely brand him as a villain because he's the one who instigated everything. But sometimes it's good to look, sit back and understand, was he inherently evil,
Yeah.
or did something egg him to become a bad guy? We only read one set of interpretation, right? And we see that, okay, he's the one who instigated Duryodhan, so he's a bad guy. But there are stories, and that's the beauty of Mahabharata. It's nothing can be taken in
It's black and
absolute
white.
terms.
Yeah.
Everything is relative.
And
Every
that is,
character has a past.
yes, and I think that is also something very unique about our culture and our mythology itself, because I don't think there would be any mythology or any belief which would, let's say, revere their villains as much as we do, right? I mean, like let's say in Durga Puja, Mahishasur is equally important
Yeah.
in the puja and in the festival, so to say. So this, I think, celebrating the evil side or acknowledging that everybody has a black side and everything is not like a black and white, is something that often comes across from, I think, our mythology and most of the stories. I mean, the villains could be very, very talented. They could have lots of skills, qualities, and a lot of good things in them, right?
See, the world culture is very much like that. For example, look at the Greek as such. Look at the Greeks, or look at the other cultures. There are seldom villains per se.
Mm,
The gods or the deities or the heroes are a mix of black and white.
mm,
So you don't need to have a set of villains as such. Like we've nicely branded Ravan as a Rakshas, but we've also told all of great things about
about
Ravan. He's a
Ravan.
devotee of Shiva.
Yeah,
He's the one who wrote the Tandav Stotra, etc., etc. Great musician. He knew the Vedas, etc. So similarly, when you look at the other cultures, there also you'll find it's very common to have the same god having his darker side of it and the brighter side of it.
right.
So this whole thing, because that's how human beings saw. Sometimes they do good things, sometimes they do bad things. So that way you'll see many of the cultures having this thing. There is no branded villain as such,
Hmm,
which happened much later in the younger cultures or younger religions, where there was a distinct negative entity. But if you look
right.
at any of the ancient cultures, it's a blend. In the same gods can do something wrong sometimes. The same gods are doing something nice sometimes. So villain, there is no typecast villain by saying, okay, these set of people are villain. Like, there's no Satan as such, or there's no Lucifer per se. But we do have the same human beings sometimes making mistake. And today we look at them in a different way. Like Kerala has temples for Duryodhan and
Yes,
uh, right, Duryodhan
I've heard
and
that.
everybody else. There's a temple for them.
Yes. I'll ask you a very generic question now. Were you always a history or a mythology buff when you were growing up, or did it did is this something that you caught up later and you studied and then you became a professor? How did this whole world come into your life?
So I was always into myths without realizing that I kind of love them, because I used to read these stories a lot and then start wondering, why would somebody do something like that? Or
Okay.
why did this hero do something like that? And I used to question, but I never got my answers, because obviously our parents were not equipped enough to answer that, okay, in mythology, this happens the way maybe I can do it today to a set of kids. I don't think anybody could help us that way. So it was there. Those kind of debates I used to kind of discuss with people. Nobody quite gave me a proper answer, and it remained that way till I got into this study of mythology, and started reading, started writing, started understanding myths, to understand that you don't judge myths by your 21st century sensibilities. You
Hmm.
have to understand when it was written, why it was written, and by who it was
Who
written.
it was.
That's a
Yes.
very, very important aspect. So yes, the myths always, and once I got into it, and once I got deeper into it, I guess, is when I realized that this is what maybe I want to do. And then I also started writing my way of interpreting a myth, or my way of
Yes.
seeing a myth, where when we, like I said, when I tell many people that, I even, if I question that, is Shakuni really that bad? And a lot of people are scandalized by saying, are you saying that there was nothing wrong with him? I said, I haven't. I've just asked a simple question, that is he completely to be blamed? Are we not going to
True.
blame anybody else for the Mahabharat war? Are we going to blame only Shakuni about the war? So these myths often make you question, and that is
Correct.
the strength of the epics and the myths. They need to be questioned. If you're not questioning, you're not going further. And remember,
Right.
any discussion on Ramayana and Mahabharata, if you think they're going to solve your question, no, they're going to add 10 more questions uh, for you to contemplate and think. And that's the power of your epics, which make you think. And if it's not making you think, that means you're not quite doing justice to the epics.
And writing, I would imagine there was a point when you reached that you read so much that now it is like it's time for you to share. Is it?
So
Is this how
started
writing came
off
into your life?
Started off as simple articles just for my friends. Obviously, I had no intention, I had no clue that anybody would read. So, it's like, okay, I'll tell you why we celebrate this festival. And I would
Okay.
write, and so, okay, I'll tell you a small story today. And that's how it all started. And till one day I decided that, okay, this is a story that needs to be told. And the magic happened when I suddenly realized that here is a story that many people don't know. So many of, like when I first embarked on my first novel, that was Shakuntala,
Mm,
everybody knew Shakuntala as the damsel in distress,
correct.
written by Kalidas. But when I came across the real Shakuntala as a character of Vyas and probably Mahabharat's first strong woman character,
Right.
I was absolutely surprised. Seeing that, what a brilliant character! What imagination of creating a character like Shakuntala. Of course, Kalidas changed the entire personality. But when I read that, I thought that this is a story that needs to be told. And trust me, when I started writing, everybody said, "Are you writing Kalidas's Shakuntala once again?" So that was the feeling. Everybody had that. What's there to say? And
Mm,
and that's how writing happened for me. And I think the book came out, and then one led to another, and that's how I've ended up writing 4 books
great.
by now.
I often wonder if it weren't the writers like you or authors like you who would not reinterpret these myths and history. I think a lot of these stories would just get lost somewhere and nobody would
True.
know in this modern time and age, because so much of this is recorded in a way, or like you said in the Vedas, it's in a way that none of wouldn't really interest a peak interest
True.
of a normal person. So thank you so much for joining this conversation and sharing so much about Indra. It has really opened up a lot of questions and curiosity in my mind, and I hope that happens to others also who read
Sure.
these books. And I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a
Thank you.
nice day. Bye.